purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person.
Hi, welcome to Freethought Forum. My name is Jeff Levan. I'll be your host tonight. We're going to discuss some issues concerning abortion. Abortion has been discussed before on this program, most notably by NARAL and TARAL representatives. But tonight we're going to focus on something kind of specific. We're going to talk about the protesters, people who are going down to the abortion clinics or places where abortions are being performed and blockading the doors in an effort to, as they say, rescue the lives of the unborn. Our guests today are Jack DeVault, who's one of the leaders in the rescue movement. He's also associated with Right to Life. Am I correct in that?
I am associated with them. I'm not a member as such.
In purpose, okay, in spirit at least. Okay, and our other guest is Dr. O.Z. White, professor of sociology, and we're going to be discussing issues. And one of the first things I'd like to ask is for you to clarify your position on your civil disobedience or you spent some time in jail, correct?
Yes.
How much time have you spent in jail?
Well, the longest single period was about 12 days. I've been on other occasions too. On
several occasions. So
yes.
You're very committed to this cause. Please let me know in a nutshell, why is it that you feel the trespassing law should not be applied to abortion protesters that blockade the doorways?
Well, we've tried to make clear that we believe that abortion is murder, the killing of an innocent human being. And if it is in fact murder, then we need to act like it's murder. And in order to act like it's murder, we need to be willing to do whatever it takes to save a life. And that's the reason that we go to the doors.
So I had heard this mentioned recently, the phrase, the necessity clause, that lawyers for the pro-life point of view are trying to use the necessity clause. Would you explain a little bit about that?
It has been used effectively in a number of places. And as a matter of fact, there was a group of 21 rescuers acquitted just a short time ago, about 2 months ago, by the allowing of the necessity defense. It isn't frequently allowed, although it's almost always invoked on the part of the defenders, because we believe that, well, let's take, for example, there's a fence around a swimming pool and it says no trespassing. And you see a little kid fall into that swimming pool. You hurdle the fence and you go to the aid of that child. That's the necessity. It's a clear case of trespass, but it's no longer criminal because it's removed from the criminal category because of the necessity of preventing a greater harm. And that's what we always rely on.
So the necessity refers to the moral necessity for someone to act in that situation.
Well, the necessity defense demands that the actor be convinced that he is preventing a greater harm than the harm caused by his trespass.
I see. Dr. O.Z. White, what would be the reason for not allowing? I mean, if a person is really dedicated to the cause and they're very dedicated to the fact they believe that these unborn are a person, a whole person, as deserving of his life as anyone who is already born, why should we not allow the necessity defense of this type?
Well, I'm a patriot and I'm a Christian. I think I need to spell that out. People have accused me of being other things when I discuss this. But basic to our society is the whole business of freedom of religion. I have no doubt that what Mr. DeVault is very sincere in his belief. But I don't believe that. And under our Constitution, I have the right to disagree with that. As a matter of fact, the majority of the population disagrees with that. And we can't get into a situation where we can have people make moral, theological decisions, present them as truth. This has happened to us over and over again historically, and then go out without any further authority and demand that everybody fit into their particular religious perspective. The doctrine of ensoulment is questionable to say the least. And this is the basis. And the basic, we talk about unborn children. Well, if you believe in that, if you believe when a sperm and an egg unite, this is in fact a human being, okay. But there's no evidence for this.
So would you say that this is a religious issue then?
Purely.
Okay. How would you?
I would say it is a matter of perspective, and that would be religious in a way of speaking. But I'd like to point out that there were a great number of religious people. These were mostly Episcopalians and Baptists and Methodists and the Society of Friends back in the 1850s, who violated the law by operating an underground railroad to protect people who were not given the status of people in this nation. The Fugitive Slave Act said that they were not human beings. They didn't qualify. And yet these Christians stuck their necks out, disobeyed the law. Many of them suffered penalties similar to what the rescuers are suffering now. And what they promulgated was finally a civil war, which had to be fought to give those slaves the same status that you and I have.
Yeah, but here again, you're comparing apples and oranges. I mean, sure, the Bible says very clearly that I must be a neighbor to anyone to whom I have the capability of being a neighbor, and the Good Samaritan builds on that and says that's anybody across race, color, and creed. But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about civil disobedience in terms of, which is another comparison I very often heard. What we're talking about here is a relatively new religious conviction. So, are you Roman Catholic? Is this?
No, I'm not.
Well, this historically, you find, beginning with the 13th century, you find Thomas Aquinas, who's certainly the prevailing theologian of the Catholic Church, talking about ensoulment. He placed it at around 40 days after conception, although he didn't really understand what conception was. You find that in the United States, historically, there were no laws about this until the mid part of the 19th century. The discovery of the microscope and the development of it to where they could pinpoint conception was one part of it, but the pressure was all on the part of physicians to establish these anti-abortion laws, who were, it was a political decision in an effort to have the responsibility of the physician rather than the midwife or some kind of professional abortionist out there. The major churches, the Lutheran Church, the Major Synod, Presbyterian Church U.S., Presbyterian USA, Methodist Church, the General Baptist Church, Episcopal Church, you mentioned them a few minutes ago. All these churches have made statements concerning the validity of pro-choice. For a very small portion of the population to say, you are wrong, I know better than you do, and assign, titles like murderer and so forth to the other group, seems to me to be violently against the American principle of separation of church and state. It is a political decision.
Let me ask, just to clarify, on the position of right to life and rescue. I know you can't speak for right to life officially, but in general on these, what is their feeling about when the unborn becomes a soul occupying person? I don't know how to phrase this exactly.
You don't know how to define a soul either, do you?
No, I don't.
I don't either. So I would, this ensoulment process is a theological exercise that I wouldn't get into. All I would say is this: if, as the Bible says, we were in God's mind before the foundations of the earth, you and I, Dr. White, all of us, those babies in the womb, they were in God's mind, in His perfect plan, before the foundation of the earth. what right then has man to step in and say, God, you are wrong in your plan. I'm going to intervene and I'm going to change your plan. Because that's precisely what we're doing.
So in other words, again, it's struggling with the words because one side doesn't want to use the word fetus, understandably. The other side doesn't want to use the word unborn child, understandably, because of the emotional baggage that those terms carry. But let's say the unborn, try to use that as a neutral term. So in your view, then, the unborn would have do the right of protection from the moment of conception, then, or in other words, as
the biological and medical facts are that from the moment of conception, everything is there that produced you and me. Everything is complete. There is no further requirement except nourishment and time and the protection of the womb. And we're trying to remove that time and protection of the womb.
So you would not make a distinction between, like some politicians have said, who will go unnamed, that rape or incest would be a reason to allow an abortion. I would take it. Am I assuming correctly?
You can assume that very correctly. The victim of rape or incest is greatly to be pitied and cherished and loved and supported, succored, but why add another crime to a crime that has occurred?
If in fact it is a crime.
Well, rape and incest are crimes.
Yes, but I'm talking about the earlier, the abortion.
Well, in my estimation, it's a crime, and I think in the scriptural interpretation, it's surely a crime.
Well, they certainly didn't think it was very important. Where did you see that in Scripture?
Well, in the Old Testament, there are a great number of places where the children were sacrificed to ancient gods when the children of Israel were in the Promised Land. They'd come into the Promised Land, and they were among the Ammonites and the Canaanites. They adopted, even the Israelites themselves, the Hebrew children, adopted these customs of sacrificing their firstborn to this god. And I can give you about 6 quotations.
Oh, of course you can, but these are born children. These children carried the term. You've got in the same passage of Scripture, you've got an entirely different penalty for the person who by accident kills a fetus and by accident kills a child. And aside from this, you're talking about the Old Testament law. In the same section there, you have a passage of Scripture which says that homosexuals should be killed. Do you believe in capital crime?
Certainly.
You do?
Mm-hmm. That's
kind of strange, isn't it? You know, pro-life on one end and anti-life on the other.
No, it's not strange at all, Doctor. If a person has been born and has had an opportunity to function in our society, has had choice, that's one of your favorite words, choice. If they've had the choice to decide whether to do right or to do wrong, whether to live righteously or to live sinfully, then if they have lived unrighteously, sinfully, and disobeyed the laws of the land, there are certainly capital crimes.
So, in other words, then, you would basically say you would propose a system of law based on the Bible, then?
Well,
let's go back to what I just said. You believe in capital punishment for homosexuals? The Bible in that same passage says this. You believe in capital punishment, and if you're going to hold to this old law to that extent, do you believe that?
No, I don't believe in capital punishment for homosexuals. I think they need help. I think they are disturbed people, but I don't think that they need to be killed.
Then there is possibility inside of your theology for an interpretation in context.
Well, my theology is not as complex as you might imagine it. I won't make those distinctions. I don't even consider that. I have found that in Jesus Christ, my life has been changed. I am a different person than I used to be. I spent 20 years in the Air Force as a fighter pilot. And when I was infected by the Lord Jesus Christ, you might say, He came in and lived in me and changed my life so drastically that I had to respond to what I believe He wanted me to do.
Isn't it strange that both of us have had that experience when we come out in 2 opposite positions?
Maybe.
And doesn't our society say that there's room for both of us? And I mean,
Have I said you can't sit there?
Well, you mean you're going
Well, I
over and
think
banging
the
on the
question
doors of the
is-
clinics and trespassing?
No, well, if you were trying to get in to get an abortion, I would try to stop you. I would do it as peacefully as I could.
Well, here's one. I'll throw out a hypothetical situation since y'all are both Christians. I'm not a Christian. I'm an atheist, as I've stated on the show before. And what if I were to make the somewhat not twisted argument, I don't want to use that word, but complex argument that the church was the enemy of reason, and that therefore I had the right, me and my friends, to blockade a church door and stop someone from their freedom of choice to worship. Would you say that because I felt very deeply about this, that I would be justified in that action?
No.
Well, I think
Why
you'd be
not?
justified in thinking that, certainly. But I agree with him, you're
Why-
not justified in the action.
See, what I'm getting at is you're saying you should be allowed the necessity clause. The
If you
necessity-
invoke the necessity clause, the necessity defense in that case, and the judge allowed it, you would be cleared. That I'll say that.
But you wouldn't consider that right.
No, I wouldn't consider that right. Just like the abortionists and the people that are profiting from the killing of babies don't think that it's right for us to stop their business.
You love to call names. You set your case and you start calling names. Abortionists, profiting from babies.
What would you call them, sir? Terminators of human life in the womb of a troubled woman? Is that?
Well, I sure wouldn't call
It's
you
very
pro-life
hard.
people. I'd call you pro-birth, but I haven't seen any evidence of you doing so much for these people once the children are born. We're living in a world at the present time where it's a front page story on the Light today. The children born today, by the time they reach middle age, given the way the third world population at the present time, the population of the earth is going to double. Now, and are we going to say this is just one of God's little mistakes, that he's going to have so many people out there that they can't be fed? Don't you think there's somebody, somehow or another, we ought to be centering in on feeding the children, caring for them once they're here? I understand, I think I understand where you're coming from. That's okay. But, let's not, and I think you understand where I'm coming from. And let's not
Yes, sir.
call each other names on
No,
the
but
basis
I'm a
of
little
having
bit tired of the bum rap of saying that we do nothing for the women once we turn them away. We have a crisis pregnancy center, and night before last, we had a family knock on our door, and a little girl this tall and beautiful that was saved by my wife at an abortion clinic. The family came in. They came back to visit because I had given them their rent for a number of months. We had given them all sorts of things. Our organizations had given them a great deal of help. After leaving this taping today, I have to go to a friend's house. This friend I met at the abortion clinic when she was trying to get in, and I turned her around. Her plumbing is stopped up, and I'm going to go help her unstop her plumbing.
I have no doubt that you're a well-meaning man. I have no doubt that you're doing this. But this is a vignette kind of case in a population where we have children literally starving to death in San Antonio.
Well,
at the present
But it brings-
time.
That's
it
true,
does-
but you
it does bring up a
categorized
point,
us as having no concept of the need for continuing help for the life.
No continuing concept. These kids live around till they're 21. You've got, somehow or another, they've got to be cared for all these
Well,
years.
it does bring about a point that is important, which is what else are the groups doing to support? I know of several women's funds that have been brought about, which is putting their money where their mouth is, saying women who want to get an abortion and can't afford it. I'm in favor of the private sector helping people with those decisions. I mean, you're dedicated to that, and I think that's probably, I think very highly of that. If a woman doesn't feel she can afford housing, can't afford to raise a child and feels trapped, I definitely feel there should be people out there like yourself who want to help her with that decision. And yes, that supports your values, but it also is helping this woman to make her own choice. So she has the right to, so she's made the choice, the free choice to keep the baby. I'm glad to see that someone is supporting that, and also on the other side. It's important that that's part of the real down-to-earth solution that isn't so glamorous and not so flashy as that's the getting your hands dirty type of.
Well, we have
that both sides, I think, do help on that
we have
point.
some serious. If Monsignor Smith was here, I would want to ask him some questions about this. You might agree with him. I don't know. We have some serious problems dating earlier than that, and that's the whole issue of birth control. I don't know whether you for or against birth control, but the United States hasn't had any development in this area under FDA guidelines in the last 30 years. It's presently behind some third world countries. 52% of the women who had abortions over the last 4 years were using birth control. And maybe one of the things we need to look at is just a simple matter of education and bringing up to date the things which are extremely common and well practiced in other countries, but they aren't allowed into our particular country because of pressure groups
You're
like
referring
Right to Life
to
and others.
What is it? The RU?
RU46 is one. Now that's an abortion pill. That's not a birth control pill. It cuts the price of an abortion drastically, of course, because medical supervision, but there's no procedure there. That is technically, that is to say that the expelling of the sperm and egg takes place after conception.
Well, I would assume that your group is, I'm sure, opposed to the RU486 then.
Of course. And I have great doubts, and there are arguments on both sides. I'm not well equipped to argue this case, but the world population explosion and the pressure on populations and the fact that our nation is poorer by 25 million souls, 25 million babies have been killed in the last 18 years. Now, this is a pitiful statistic, and I believe that it impinges on a great number of other social problems. It'll impinge on the ability to raise an army, the ability to support Social Security, the ability to provide a labor force.
Do you think we won't have enough people?
We're importing unskilled people, and we're not giving ourselves a chance to have our own race, our own people, our own nation develop.
And you think that we would improve this by outlawing abortion and having 700,000 unwanted children born?
There is no such thing as an unwanted child. There is a waiting list a mile long.
There are
I just got a
34.
letter from Senator Benson last week that said he disagrees with me on some of the things, but he said he wants to see the whole emphasis of the pro-choicers changed to give the adoption a chance.
Well, there are 34,000 children in the United States today waiting for adoption. Now, granted, they aren't little blue-eyed blonde girls. Most of them aren't even white. This is not really any kind of an answer to this problem. Statistically, it's not. It's just not.
When you mentioned a statistic sticks in my mind that I read from, and I wasn't even looking through abortion literature or pro-choice literature. It was in the World Almanac that said that almost 50% of black conceptions, unborn babies, are aborted. 50%. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that that's a racist program. The thing that comes to mind in my mind is if it's left to choice, don't the women, black women included, have the choice then to not abort if they don't want to? Black people, according to statistically speaking, I don't want to sound like I'm making sweeping generalities, but amongst the religious, the black people as a race tend to be more religious, and that concerns me, that disparity between those two figures. I was amazed at so many.
It is a concern. It is. I think a lot of it needs to be worked at on the level of education, and
sex education or contraceptive education?
Across the board. You do not find these statistics hold in areas like San Antonio, where the black population has made more of an advance than it has in other areas.
Yeah, you have less of the slum type.
You find that anti-abortion activities are most fruitful in the lower income, lower educational level. For instance, one statistic that sticks in my mind is that women, upper level income women who have a graduate degree, 78% of them support some kind of pro-choice regimen. I think you have to understand too that in terms of there are two poles. There's his pole, which would really sees abortion as an evil on any level. At the present time, about 10% of the population believes this. There's the opposite pole, which believes in abortion on demand without any restriction. There's about 25% believe that. The rest, everybody else is somewhere in the middle. And I really wouldn't. I'm pretty conservative. I certainly wouldn't put myself on either one of these extremes. But there is a relationship between education and income. A very obvious relationship. Much more of a relationship there than there is in areas of religion. For instance, in Texas, the number of people who list their religion as Roman Catholic is almost approximates the percentage of Roman Catholics in Texas. Birth control, for instance. When you move to the north side of San Antonio, the more affluent areas, you find that the membership of the Roman Catholic churches there, the size of the family approximates the size of the family in the area in which they live. And this in spite of the fact that papal edicts over and over again are concerning the evils of birth control. So I think you're really talking about education and economics more than anything else.
On birth control, for instance, would I then be correct in saying that you would not be against barrier contraceptives, such as condoms?
I don't take any position. My concern is not with contraception at all. My concern is with chastity.
After contraception.
I believe that
after
chastity
conception.
before marriage is a biblical principle that is both in the Old and the New Testament, and I believe we can stand on it today, and I believe it's the proper course for human behavior.
See, now when I was 18, I didn't used to believe that, but now I have a daughter who's 5 years old.
Having a daughter
I believe
does
chastity
make a
is
difference.
probably a better idea. It looks
Amen.
better to me.
Some of my wildest friends are the ones most protective of their daughters.
But
through the years.
also, I make sure that my daughter gets a good education, sex education, and my boy too, for that matter. We've got a couple minutes to wrap it up. I want to say before I let you make a statement, I wanted to thank you because Father Cheryl Smith was supposed to be here, and you had to work up this program in very short notice, and I appreciate you coming down and making the extra effort to help us out. Okay, would you go ahead and make a short statement, about a minute or so?
Well, I first want to respond to one statement. That is, the organizations with which I'm familiar, and I don't know the specific statistics, but we have been largely involved. The majority of the adoptions that we have helped place are black babies, period. I don't know the exact ratio, but I know that they've been predominantly black babies. We are looking for adoptions any place. We are looking to expedite and facilitate any adoption of any kind, but that's what has come up. The real crux of this matter is whether or not, as I said before, whether God is, whether He created us, whether He created us back at conception, or whether that was just a biological accident of some type. If we accept that, then there is no God, and what we should do is make the race as comfortable and as pure and as economically sound as we possibly can. If there is a God, though, I believe we have a serious obligation to stop the killing of innocent human beings.
Thank you. Dr. White?
See, you did it again. You made me a nihilist because I disagree with you, because of something you posited in the early argument. You cannot do that if you're going to debate any issue and, debate it fairly. Well, I wind it up this way. I respect your position. I respect the fact that you feel so strongly about it. True believers, self-righteous people, however, can get very dangerous. And you're welcome to come and pick at my house. I'm on the board of Nova Health Systems. You can come pick it anytime you want to. I'll even bring you coffee. But please stay off my grass. That's trespassing.
I wouldn't dare go on your grass unless there were someone getting killed on your property, Dr. White.
You did it again.
Okay, gentlemen, I appreciate you very much for being here tonight. This has been a good show. This is Jeff Levan. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny. Decadunk and sin